If you invested in a condo in 2022 or 2023 at the height of the market and you're getting ready to have to either close or you want to flip your contract, well, you better listen to this whole episode because we are going to cover the complications that we are seeing investors deal with as we head into the market through 2024 into 2025. You're listening to the Manning Up on Real Estate podcast with your host, Cameron Manning. We bring you the industry experts each episode who will help you man up on your real estate career. Welcome back to another episode of Manning Up After Dark on the Manning Up on Real Estate podcast. I'm glad you're here with me. I am your host, Cameron Manning, and today we are definitely having a bit of a dark discussion when it comes to the risks associated with investing in pre-construction condos in changing markets. Now, it's no surprise to anyone who invested in real estate or purchased even a principal residence in 2022 or 2023 bought at the height of the market. From that point forward, especially at the beginning of 2022, we saw several things happen. One, we saw interest rates rise at least 10 times over the last year and a half, almost 2 years. That caused a lot of pressure for people who were banking on buying this property 2 years down the road. And the Bank of Canada was saying they were going to keep rates low for a long time, and they never did. Now, suddenly the rates are much higher and the numbers maybe aren't working out. Secondly, we have seen prices also adjust because as we've seen the interest rates rise, we've also seen the inventory go up, giving more choice for buyers. When you have more choice for buyers, well, that does drag the property values down. And these are just a few minor things that we are seeing when it comes to people who invested in pre-construction have to deal with when they're either looking to close or possibly put their property up for sale as an assignment of contract. Now, to set the stage here, when you purchase a pre-construction condo, you are buying it at the market price of the time. In some situations, we have had clients who've done absolutely well on an upward market, but you are taking the risk that if the market does go down over the next 2 years, you do have to be prepared for that. You are running that risk. And unfortunately, a lot of people invest with the hope that the property values are going to keep going up and they're going to cash out on this thing as an assignment, and they're going to make a boatload of money. Unfortunately, that isn't always the case. One of the number one things I say to all of my clients when they're looking at pre-construction is your number one strategy should always be to close. If the market makes sense and you can make a profit, then you can assign and make your money and get out. However, always have that as a plan B. Plan A should be to close. Now, unfortunately, things do change sometimes over the 2-year time or sometimes 5-year time if you're looking at a tower, when suddenly maybe you had a job and you lost your job, or something changed in your marital status, or you had a kid and now you can't close on the property because you got to focus on the family. Any number of things could happen that change what's going on for you. But unfortunately, it still rings that you need to be prepared to close because there's not always a guarantee to assign. Now, let's talk about what is happening right now to buyers of pre-construction as they're going through the market. Well, number one, the prices have gone down in some cases. We have seen this, unfortunately, where the value of a property is not as high as they had hoped. So if they're looking to flip the property and make money, it's not happening because the prices haven't gone high enough for them to cover the expenses. Some of the expenses that are incurred when selling an assignment of contract are things like an assignment fee. Now that ranges anywhere from $1,000 plus GST all the way up to 3% in most cases. So between those two, that's added cost for selling your assignment to get out of it. There's also some legal fees that are involved in selling. And of course, if you're hiring a realtor, there's going to be commissions. So you have to look at what you paid for that property, what you're selling it for, and what are those expenses going to equal out? Are you going to make money on your assignment or are you going to not make money? Are you selling it at a loss and giving up a portion of your deposit to the end buyer who's now buying the property from you? That's all dependent on what's happening in the market. And unfortunately, a lot of buyers, they say, I don't want to lose my deposit. And it's just sometimes the case where that might happen if the market deems that the buyers are not going to buy the property at the price you were asking it for. One of the other things that does make it difficult for selling assignments is obviously with the lack of access. These are active construction sites. We don't have access as realtors or as sellers to access most cases with this property in order to be able to show it to a prospective buyer. So that buyer is relying on the marketing materials, no different than when you purchased it 2 years prior. If there is a significant amount of inventory like we have seen now, buyers don't have to necessarily go off of the specs. They can go look at other projects that are maybe 1 or 2 years old and still get something that's fairly new because there's enough of them now on the market. They don't have to buy yours on spec and hope that it closes on time, hope that the developer did a good job. When you're putting your property up for sale, you're literally offering up a piece of paper saying that this is what I bought and this is what I'm asking for it. So that makes it very, very difficult. Now, some developers have started opening up construction tours or showings on set times that allow prospective assignees, as they're called, or buyers of the assignment, access onto the property to take a look at what it is. But this is very rare and should not be counted on when you're looking to sell your assignment. One of the biggest issues that we have seen people face in the market right now, and this again is due to the fact that the values have come down, is appraisal issues. The properties, unfortunately, especially if they bought in 2022, are not appraising out. In a lot of cases, I've seen anywhere from a property appraising 10 grand less all the way up to $50,000 or $60,000 less than the person has actually bought the property. So what does that mean for you as the buyer? Well, first and foremost, banks are going to lend on the appraised value. So if it came down $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 less, that difference in the purchase price, you have to make it up on top of the down payment that you're already putting into the property. You have to make up that difference. So that is a huge risk if you don't have the capital to be able to close, that you could risk non-completion. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that risk and what it involves if you don't complete on your property a little further into this video. So make sure you keep watching so you understand the risks associated with not coming up with that capital. But that's the biggest risk. If your property doesn't appraise out, you have a high risk of having to come up with significant more capital to be able to close. If you do close, there's other issues that you're arising with. One is the fact that right now with today's interest rates and with the purchase prices and where rents are at, things aren't cash flowing. And of course, in British Columbia, our lovely government has also regulated short-term rentals, which makes it a little bit more difficult for you to be able to cash flow these properties. So if you are closing and you're getting a higher interest rate than you were originally anticipating back in 2022, you have a high chance that your cash flow is going to be negative. And when you put that tenant in there, you're actually going to be covering a more cost than you're actually getting from them. Now, this is not great if you're planning to hold long-term, because how long can you hold on to a negative cash flowing properties? And I do have a thought process around this, being that these properties are still in Greater Vancouver, and long-term, this market always does very well. This is just a short-term pain that people are feeling. If the cash flow is negative to the point where you are comfortable, let's say it's $50, $60, $100 a month, that's not the worst thing in the world. You can hold on because long-term, you're going to do very well on the back end. It's the properties where the negative cash flow is like $1,000 a month, where that really does start to put pressure on a lot of sellers. So in that case, a lot of sellers are having to then close on the property, put it back up for sale, and potentially still sell at a loss because they weren't able to sell it as an assignment. They're going to have holding costs now because they've closed on the property. They've got a mortgage. There's going to be mortgage penalties involved, still commissions. There's going to be also additional issues like, could the government double tap the GST on it? That's definitely something we can have a discussion about at a later date, but that is a possibility where if you resell the property, you pay GST because it's brand new, the government could make you sell it with GST again because it was never occupied. Not only that, selling it really fast, now it becomes income. There's so many tax related issues that arise if you sell the property because you're going to be negative cash flow, that all of these things have to be weighed out. Now, there's one overarching risk that I want to talk about when it comes to pre-construction right now and what is happening out there to buyers who have bought these units. And it's the fact that putting more money down, it really fucking sucks if you have to do that. Selling at a loss absolutely fucking sucks if you have to do that. Putting a tenant in and not cash flowing absolutely fucking sucks. They can't do short-term rentals. But the biggest risk right now is if you don't complete. If you don't actually fulfill your obligation on the contract, because the developer doesn't have to make any adjustments because the market changed for you. You're not special to the developer. You made a contractual agreement to purchase that property from them, and they have delivered it in the time in which they have agreed to deliver it. What happens in the market is irrelevant to anything else. So the risks are as such. One, if you do not close on your property, your deposit is forfeit. The developers will retain your deposit and you are out that money. Now, if you've put 10% on, let's say, a $500,000 purchase, that's 50 grand out the door. If it's 15%, that's $75,000 out the door. And that, of course, fluctuates depending on the type of property that you purchase. The biggest risk is if that deposit that they retain is not enough to cover any losses that the developer incurs with reselling that property, they can come after you for any additional cost of the loss. So for example, if they put the property up for sale that you purchased for 500 and you put 50 grand down and they end up selling it at $425,000, your 50 grand goes towards that partial coverage and they can come after you for the additional $25,000. It is in your best interest at the end of the day, even if you are going to take a loss on your property, to actually close, to actually fulfill your contractual obligation, get out, and then take a smaller loss at the end of the day. Investing is inherently risky, and we all need to understand that before we put pen to paper or digital signature purchasing a property. The markets do fluctuate, so you have to have a plan A, plan B, plan C when it comes to buying these. Now, as I mentioned, this might sound like doom and gloom, and it's something that you need to be aware of, but there are several things that you can do, even in today's market, if you're looking at pre-construction, to hedge your bets against any of these issues. Number one, I do believe that we've hit kind of the bottom of the prices right now. And as rates continue to decline, we are going to start to see a bit of a rebound in the market. So I don't think we're going to see too much. Now, I don't have a crystal ball, so don't clip this video and hold it against me, okay? I am not a fortune teller. Anything could happen with the government. Anything could happen globally that could change that. But if we continue to see the trends that we're seeing, we're going to see prices start to climb up. They're not going to be crazy, but they're going to go up. So investing in pre-construction might still be a good idea today. Also, buying in early is absolutely key. And why I say that is important. A lot of our clients and a lot of the developments that we have had, luckily, have not had some appraisal issues. Now, some of them have, don't get me wrong, it's not across the board, but because our clients are getting in very, very early on developments, their appraisals are coming in at least closer to the price they're paying, or at least at, whereas people who bought in later, they're paying higher price tags for those properties. They're paying an inflated price because as they sell out, they increase the price. Those are the people who've been struggling. I have had realtors calling me saying, are your clients dealing with these appraisals coming in low? And in most of the developments, we've been able to say, thankfully not, because they got in early enough and got in at base pricing. So working with an agent who has early access is definitely one of the greatest hedges against market fluctuations that you can do. Because if someone comes in and buys it 2 weeks later for 50 grand more, they're the ones who are going to be more in trouble, especially if they're setting the future prices of the property. So keep that in mind. A couple other things are making sure that you are buying it with the lowest assignment fees that the market will bear. This is very market dependent. Right now, we are seeing a lot of developers offering $1,000 assignment fees, and that is fantastic. It's literally a paperwork fee. But when the markets are hotter, like they were in 2021, like they were at the beginning of 2022, we were seeing that as high as 3% in some cases. So if you're having to pay a 3% assignment fee on top of all the other expenses to sell a property as an assignment, it's going to be very, very difficult for you to recoup any money. So make sure you're dealing with a realtor who has access and able to get a better deal on the assignment fee. Some of our cases when the market was hot, we got it from 3% to 1%. That's the best we could do. It's still better than the average person out there. Lastly, make sure that you have your plan in place to be able to close. Know that it's coming up. When you buy pre-construction, it's a lot of hurry up and then wait for 2 years. And then at the very end, there's a lot of run and gun. It's going to be very, very tight. So making sure you're well prepared in advance to close is very, very important. Talk to your lenders. See if they can do a long-term rate hold if possible. Make sure that you have something locked in so when the time comes, you're not scrambling on the back end. Also, make sure you're putting aside more money than you think you need, because you never know what kind of appraisal issues are going to come up if the market has changed. As a savvy investor, someone who's watching this and says, I'm not going to get caught with my pants down in this case, make sure you're putting that money aside. You're planning for any issues to come up. You have an excess of capital required to close on your property. So that's just a little bit of what buyers are dealing with in today's market. It's an absolute fucking dumpster fire out there, and you need to be aware of it if you've bought properties and are coming up to close. Appraisal issues are going to happen. You got to be prepared for that. There's also issues where you want to assign it and the market is just not cooperating. I've got one project right now where there's 42 listings in the building for sale right now. Basically, it is a race to the bottom for those who can't close. So make sure you don't put yourself in that situation. Make sure you have the ability to close. Work with realtors if you still want to do this strategy, who have that early access, who have that ability to get deals for you and get you those lowest prices possible, because that's also a great way you're going to hedge this. As I mentioned before, I think pre-sales still have their place, and I think there's some really good opportunities that are starting to come up in our market right now. If you're buying in today's market when it's the lowest and people are struggling, 2 years from now, you could potentially do very, very well if we continue to see growth in the market. That is just the speculation side of things. Invest with your own numbers in mind, invest with your plan Bs, and of course, always be prepared to close. That's it from me on the Manning Up on Real Estate podcast. Thanks so much for listening. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, drop some comments, and leave a review. We will see you guys on the next episode.